I'm like, I'm an adult traveling around with this giant plushie. Why? And then I realized it's because it makes me happy.
Welcome to the Stroke Cast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 135 of the Stroke Cast. Today's episode is brought to you by the fine folks at Modus Nova. To find out if Modus Nova can help you recover the use of a hand or foot after stroke, visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. And by Like-Minded. To see if this membership program can help you thrive after stroke, visit strokecast.com/like-minded. This week's conversation is actually pretty wide-ranging. While it all starts with how a big plush brain can help and empower folks with physical brain damage or psychological conditions, it goes deeper than that. We talk about the importance of play, about emotional education, about the nature of the brain, the mind, and soul, and about outsourced manufacturing strategies. But ultimately, today's conversation is a conversation about how to human. Your pet brain is a big, adorable plush brain with giant eyes for those of us who could probably use a spare one. And once my girlfriend saw it online, she wanted one. And really, we could both use some extra neurons. As her birthday approached, I decided, I should probably just go ahead and order one for her. I went through the website, and it became clear that brain was really about so much more than just a squishy toy. I decided after that I wanted to talk to the company founder who designed Brain. And that's what this episode is. And I'll get to that in a moment. Brain shipped in his box, and yes, I'm already anthropomorphizing and gendering him. And Cathy went downstairs to take care of some other stuff and saw the distinctive box. It has a big drawing of Brain on it. She felt a little wave of jealousy or envy or something and thought, "Aw, someone else got a brain." And then she took a closer look at the box and saw my name on it. She scooped it up, brought it upstairs, and giddily shuffled through our apartment to show me. She was thrilled. I mean, I briefly toyed with the idea of making her wait another day until her actual birthday, but that seemed sort of unfair since the box made it really clear what it was, and would be kind of cruel too. And I think Brain appreciated it too, because the box probably wasn't super comfortable for him. So now that we have a spare brain in our lives, let's learn more about Brain, how it came to be, and why Brain is so much more than a kid's toy. Let's meet designer and founder, Adika James. So Adika, thanks so much for joining us on the show this week. I'm glad we could make this happen.
Me too. I'm excited to be here.
So this thing is just fracking adorable. I mean, where did this design come from? How did you come up with this?
Well, Brain, as we call Brain, is based on a cartoon character that I've been drawing for years, who's kind of like a little alter ego. And Brain would experience all kinds of things that I think a lot of humans do, kind of like watching the mouth run and being like, stop, 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 and not being able to control the head that's got the mouth in it, slapping himself on the forehead with his brainstem, kind of ways for me to emotionally process shame and self-judgment and all kinds of stuff in a way that I could make it funny. And my partner saw these cartoons, and at a certain point, he's like, I think that a lot of people would relate to this. And then I thought, well, what if we could, instead of just giving them a cartoon, what if we could give them a way to hug these things that we do, to hug their own brain? So that kind of turned into the idea of creating a plush brain, so you could actually hug your own brain and look it in the face when it's acting certain funny ways, and create a separate narrative so that I am not experiencing these things. My brains are experiencing these things.
So it's a way of then, I don't want to say detaching, because you're not really detaching from that. But at the same time, I think one of the things that we hear folks talk about as general good guidance is you wouldn't talk to a friend using the same kind of negative talk you often do when you talk to yourself.
Exactly. So this is a way that we can kind of externalize the experience that we're having and remove the shame and also hear what we're saying and hear what we're feeling from a different context. And I think that we're looking to do this all the time. People name their cars, they name, like anything we can name, we tend to name. And there's something that's really wonderful about a plush because it's so endearing. And we think of plush as kids, but actually our audience tends to be pretty much adults. And they're funny. They're funny. So if we can make it funny, we now have this renewable resource that we can tap into that is humor. And humor has a way of really turning the volume down on painful emotions so that we can experience the emotions, but we can also see they're kind of funny. So he's based on the cartoon character, and then he's based on a giant stuffed plush made by a company called Squishables, who we ended up prototyping the first brain with. That is ridiculous. It's a warable, as they call it. It's got awkward eyeballs. It's drooling a little bit. And it was just one of these plush toys that when I saw in a store window, I pointed at it and I said, I must have this object, and literally traveled around with it because we were on the road nonstop at the time. So I'm like, I'm an adult traveling around with this giant plushie. Why? And then I realized it's because it makes me happy. Every single time I see this thing, it makes me smile. And sometimes all we need in the day is just a reference point of what it feels like to just feel okay for a second. And that is probably one of the most powerful things you could have sitting around your home. Just something that makes you happy for a second and gives you a reference point of being okay.
I think one of the things that we need to see is it's okay for adults to embrace the plushies and the stuffed animals in their life. Each year I go on a nerd cruise, and one of the things we did that I've done a couple of years is just arrange a photo shoot for everybody's fluffy friends who are just traveling with them. And we'll get 2-3 dozen stuffed animals in this picture from adults, and we see some of them just sort of coming up to the area where we're going to be doing this, and they got sort of look little uncomfortable, and then they start to see everybody else, and then they start to, you take this bear or this kitty out of the bag, and it's sort of the first time they've, a lot of folks have sort of embraced this support of the stuffed animal as an adult and not feel embarrassed or ashamed in some way.
Yeah. I love that you do that. That's such a great way to break down the boundaries of this idea that we have, particularly in the United States or North America, that there's a distinction between things that are enjoyable as a child and things that are enjoyable as an adult. And there's this hard line between child and adult. And that's not necessarily global. If you look at Japan, anime, manga, stuffed animals, trinkets, toys, just as many adults are playing with these things as kids are, because they make our lives happier. They're fun, and they tap into that part of us that's really ready to play. That's not just something that's a surface element. Fun gives us access to learning. When something is fun, it actually gets us ready for challenge. We make games harder on purpose because we know from a systemic experience that we're ready for more. And because it's fun, because it's a game, we're okay with it. We're not afraid to fail. We kind of like it when we drop the ball. We laugh when we drop the ball. And that's what these kinds of toys, as we call them, I think help keep alive in us. And our society, particularly in the States, there's a lot of messaging that that's not okay anymore, or that that's only for certain demographics or types of people, which is, that's just an idea. That's not a truth.
Yeah, and aside from that, for many years I was traveling a lot on business, and I traveled also with a little 3-inch penguin in my pocket that he actually had his own blog back in the heyday of blogs. And, once we get back to traveling again, he's going to be starting up his Instagram again. But
nice. He's been lazy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Penguins.
Because everybody likes penguins. But and of course everybody likes Brain, but I mean Brain isn't just adorable. I mean, we're talking about play, you're talking about learning, you're talking about embracing it and being able to hug your brain and share anxieties or whatever with brain. I mean, you've got this sort of bigger purpose around just releasing this cute, squishy brain into the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think there's so many angles that I think are critical about what I'm hoping brain to instigate a movement around. I honestly think we've been going about the concept of mental health all wrong. And I think we've been going about the concept of teaching people about their brains all wrong. And that a lot of times, by the time you start talking about the brain, people start to have this context that, okay, there's something wrong. No, there's not something wrong, but don't you think it might be a little helpful to get curious about that squishy thing upstairs that creates your reality? Might be kind of helpful. And I think that there's really a critical missing piece to basic education. In basic K through 12 education, we have STEM, we even have science, technology, arts, we even have STEAM. We're not teaching young humans what thoughts and emotions are, what they're not, and how to work with them in healthy ways. For example, when you experience something, you may or may not even realize it, but you often will have a thought that comes with that experience. Oh, they obviously don't like me, right? That would be an example. And very often that thought is followed by an emotion that reinforces that thought. So frustration, anger, shame, resentment, whatever that might be. And so now you have a thought and you have a somatic experience and it's reinforcing that thought that makes this experience seem very real. That person clearly doesn't like me because I'm feeling so much shame and so much resentment. And when you understand that there's some mechanics to what's happening, you can step back from that experience and look at that and say, okay, well, is that true? Number one, is that thought true? Thought is just a mental event. It doesn't mean that that's my reality, right? So there's something in us that's able to watch our thoughts. There's something in us that's able to name our emotions. And who that person is a much bigger conversation, right? But, ultimately in our country, a lot of the music, the media, our culture, our parents, we're being taught how not to feel. Buck it up, be strong, just be happy. Don't think negative thoughts. Well, the full spectrum of emotions are part of the human experience, and many, many thoughts are part of the human experience, and none of them are necessarily bad, but not all thoughts are necessarily true. And emotions are here to serve us, right? Emotions are here to actually help point us towards what it is we're experiencing and where the source of that is coming from. What is the thought that makes this emotion seem appropriate? And so when we teach people how not to feel and not to feel their feelings, how to just be happy, how to only be strong or only be XYZ, what we're effectively training is a society of sociopaths. I mean, I'm just going to say it up front. It's people who don't know how to feel. And I'm not saying we have a society of sociopaths, but when you teach people how not to feel things, they're still going to have these feelings and they're going to get repressed and they're going to get confused and they're going to come out in really funny ways. So I 100% believe that if we could teach not just K through 12, but all people, the basics of how the brain works, how the different parts of the brain communicate with each other, what can happen when some of them aren't working right, and then how to work with our thoughts and emotions in healthy ways that lead to conscious behaviors, I think we'll see a significant drop in anxiety, depression, mental health disorders, cyberbullying, suicide, and an increase in compassion, because we'll look around and realize everybody's going through this. And not only are we going through the basics of how a healthy brain works, when your brain has got some issues, right? If it's got physical damage, if you've got something that's making some parts of it not operating right, now you're working with a lot, right? You're working with two sets of experiences. So just helping people get curious about this instead of just this icky thing that in our head that we don't want to think about till there's something wrong, but to get really fascinated with it, I think is really important. And using play and edutainment, I believe, is the best gun we have. These are the guns that are media, messaging, music, that they can really turn people in some of the wrong directions and get us lost in the wrong messages. So let's use the same gun to get us back on path. And, one of the things that is ubiquitous to all humans is that we love to play. It's in our nature. And if you can make it funny, generally can make it interesting.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot to unpack in that. I think one of the things that when you're talking about that, that mirrors, I think, a lot of the discussion we're starting to see happening more often around the ideas of toxic masculinity and those sorts of issues. Is that gets tied into a whole bunch of other conversations that are happening societally now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day. I do some coaching, and one of the things I've noticed is that there's a lot of men in particular who literally don't know how to name the emotions they're experiencing. Like, what are you feeling right now? I really don't. It's like, was that frustrating? Yeah, I guess you could call it that. So I literally will hand them an emotions wheel, and they'll be able to identify it when they see that. But they've been taught that it's appropriate for women to experience emotions, but not men, which is, it's kind of insanity. Because now what you're saying is 50% of all humans don't experience the full spectrum of emotions. And I'd say, well, that's, most people could probably agree that's not true, right? So there's just a lot of training that I don't think anybody consciously decided we're going to train some suffering into into our society, but it just got passed down. And who do we learn from? We learn from our parents, who learn from their parents, and we know a lot more about how humans work and how the mind works. And I think it's time to start making that conversation more interesting for everybody.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that that is especially challenging for a lot of stroke survivors and caregivers, and especially those with a male survivor in the picture, is the questions of pseudobulbar affect or emotional lability, where what happens after stroke or after TBI is that things, as the brain is just physically damaged in some way, you can find the emotional lability means you just start laughing at inappropriate times or crying for absolutely no reason. And that can be completely disconnected from feelings of sadness or anything like that, And when you start already questioning your identity, and now, especially if you've been a stoic person in your life, suddenly you start just crying at the slightest provocation, that's scary, that's threatening to your own self-worth and to people around you who've come to see you as the rock. That is a very frightening thing for them as well. And we often don't know how to deal with it when other people start experiencing these emotions. And it's just a thing that happens. And so many people, even in the hospital, if the doctors or the therapists don't tell them that this is a thing, they just have no idea. And you combine that with everything else that we've been raised to believe, and it just makes things that much more complicated. And it's just that one other thing to deal with post-stroke.
Wow. Yeah. I can only empathize with that. It's that, we have we build a familiarity with whatever our operating system is. And I think as humans, we like to have a sense of control and agency. And so if you take that away, that's one of the most challenging things for a human to experience. So I really honor that very deeply.
Yeah. So now, one of the things when we're talking about is we don't talk about how the brain is structured. I mean, growing up in science class, we know we learn medulla, cerebellum, cerebrum, and that's about it in terms of what's happening there. I think the other thing we encounter the metaphor of the brain as the CPU or the computer controlling the body. One of the things I've come to think of it as, the brain is really more of the internet. It's not like one part of the brain controls everything. It's like every different part of the brain is sort of routing information to different parts as best it can, getting around broken areas and trying to arrive by consensus at what it wants the body to do or to react. And it's so much more complex than a simple command and control mechanism.
Yeah, and it's not just a one-way feedback loop too. The body is giving the brain information, the brain's giving the body information. There's external data. Yeah, we're fascinating. I mean, I don't even call this a creature. We're a fascinating experience.
An experience. I like that. That's an interesting abstract way of looking at life. We are an experience.
Yeah, and I imagine people who have experienced a stroke are really experiencing a different experience itself. And you think about this, we have this happen in a handful of ways that we accept, like when you're dreaming. Most time, unless you're in a lucid dream, when you're aware you're dreaming, you're in the dream. And if somebody in the dream were to ask you, "Are you dreaming?" you'd be like, "No, I'm not dreaming." Right? That's your reality.
Now get out of here with that 20-foot spatula.
Right? Exactly. Where's my penguin? But it's all real. So which experience of reality are you having right now? And maybe if we can be a little kinder on ourselves, that this is freaking complex. That I'm having an experience right now. I'm having an experience like I'm just laughing and I don't even know why. This guy's laughing. I'm not laughing, but this guy's laughing.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we really wanted to help with the externalizing of, is like thrust a giant bulbous big-eyed brain in someone's face when you're not really sure what's going on, but just say he's got this going on, right? And at least now everybody's got a reference point that we're all on the same page with. Okay, this is a little goofy and funny, and what are you gonna
do? Exactly. Have you read the Harry Potter books?
I haven't. I've seen all the movies twice. I haven't read the books yet.
In the last movie, we have the scene where after Harry dies and he's in the all-white interpretation of the train station with Dumbledore, also dead. And Harry says, "Professor, is this real or is it all in my head?" And Dumbledore responds with, "Of course it's all in your head, Harry. Why should that mean it's not real?" And
yeah. Yep.
And I think that's something that just sort of resonates there, because that reality does exist in our heads, regardless of which one it is.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes there's something really beautiful. It's what we call creativity and innovation. Like Disney had a lot of things that were in his head. And people could have said, "Oh, that's not reality. Don't worry about that." But he looked at that and said, "But it could be." Right. And that's okay. Maybe you are experiencing an elephant in the room that nobody else is seeing. That, well, cool. Okay. Maybe that's not super pleasant, but what do you want to do with that? Maybe do you want to turn it into an art piece? Do you want to draw it? Do you want to do something with it instead of trying to push it away? Like, we get what we get sometimes. And, I think that if there's any point to life, the point is to enjoy it. So how can we make this fun? How can I find the funny in this? Because if I can do that, it's going to be okay.
So, obviously we've been talking a lot about sort of this what's happening mentally, and we talk about the initiative to actually bring Brain into the world was to help people address some of those concerns in a fun way and educate them. But more recently, you've also now been seeing Brain sort of embraced by folks with physical brain issues, like those of us in the stroke and TBI communities, those of us, those folks who are living with tumors or who have lived with tumors. I mean, what's it been like seeing Brain get adopted by these wider communities?
Oh my gosh. I just put a hand to my heart when I see some of the stories that we see. It's been humbling. It's been exciting. I just have so much deep respect for everybody's journey out there. And, being human is tricky unto itself. But what's so exciting is a lot of people who really relate to Brain, they're sharing these stories, and they naturally share not just the difficulties, but they're sharing like what they're really gaining from it. And I just think that's so beautiful. And something that we're finding with Brain is that we soft launched Brain just last December, just to see, do people get it? Do they like it? Do they find Brain as cute as we do? And what we found was a lot of people who saw Brain, they saw Brain was made exactly for them. So people with TBI saw, "Oh my gosh, this is for me. I feel so seen." People who are really struggling with, bipolar or depression, they saw that and they felt like, this is for me. And this is reinforcing something that I've continued to be both challenged and inspired by from a marketing perspective is, generally you want to pick your audience. You're either really serving anxiety or depression, but not both. You're serving stroke, but not TBI. And I kept pushing back on that because I really think that we're serving anybody with a brain. And there's as many ways of being a human with a brain as there are being human. So I've loved learning more about all these different audiences and what it's like to be in that experience through the way that Brain is reaching them and through the way that they're reaching each other because of Brain. So that's been really heartwarming and exciting. And it's just one more thing that helps me confirm that I am humanity's biggest fan. I think humans are amazing.
And that's great. I think we're pretty amazing too. But of course, one of your themes then is around how to human. I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah. So this is a video series that I've had in me that I've been wanting to get up on the site and start to do little short clips of. But kind of going back to the fact that I think we're missing a critical piece of education, which is how to work with our thoughts and emotions in healthy ways. It's also, I think, revisiting how we have looked at a lot of things that we do as humans. So, for example, how to celebrate versus idolize, how to collaborate versus compete, how to receive our gifts so that we can continue sharing them, how to do anxiety. There's a way to do it that can actually create something productive out of it. How to emotions, so many things that I think that we're taught are causing a lot of kind of backwards operations that aren't serving us anymore. And a lot of them are based on fight or flight type of responses. They're based on a brain that, our biology really still hasn't caught up to the technology in the world that we live in right now. We are facing more data overload, more decisions, more personal exposure or pressure to expose, more demand of our time. And that's not slowing down anytime soon. So how to acknowledge this has happened and look at how we do the basics of human. For example, a lot of people really want to be famous right now. And, I think that they want to be famous because ultimately they want to be loved and they want to feel like they're safe and they're part of a community. But what happens is instead of celebrating that person for their gifts and the unique value they bring, there tends to be this shift to idolization. So now you're idolized and you're supposed to be something other than human. You're supposed to be perfect for everybody. Ellen DeGeneres had a really great riff at one point about how when she went vegan, it was like publicly the worst thing ever because she was either too vegan for some people or not vegan enough. And she was like, look, I'm just being me. Right. And so I think there's a better way of being able to put our voices and gifts out there and have our voices and gifts received. And that is to learn how to celebrate each other's gifts and celebrate that I get to experience your music, or I get to experience the beauty you bring, right? This is great for me. This is great for you, but I'm not going to idolize you because that's not good for anybody. That actually separates us. And ultimately what we're looking for is connection. So I'd love to create a little series of these, how to human in a way that, my dream is to animate them. So they're fun and they're silly. And we can kind of do a little palm to forehead about some of the funny things that we're doing that very clearly aren't working. And if we collaboratively kind of just shift our perspective a little bit, then maybe we could start to make some change.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's one of the things that jumped out at me as you were talking there. I'm glad you went into that a little bit more. The whole question of celebration versus idolization. Could you talk a little bit more then about what those terms specifically mean?
In the context of what I've been observing, we're really not very well equipped on how to receive the gifts that we've each been bestowed. And I believe we have been. We all have charisma, intellect, certain artistic gifts, music, coding, gardening, whatever it is, right? Everybody has the set of unique skills that they have. And we have a hard time celebrating that for some reason, right? How often do you get a compliment or hear someone getting a compliment? Wow, you really nailed that talk. Or by the way, you look amazing today. And somehow the socially appropriate response would be, oh no, I just got lucky. And this old thing, whatever. And it's we brush it off. And so if you take a step back and you look at that, what you're doing is you're saying, no, I refuse your appreciation of the beauty that I just brought for you, right? So nobody wins in that situation. Whereas I think that the more we can encourage people to understand that your gifts aren't something to be ashamed of or overly proud of. They're what you've been bestowed. As far as I know, you didn't ask to be this talented artist that you are, this talented writer, or whatever it is. It's been bestowed upon you. So this is something that you have. And if you don't receive that within yourself, then you can't share that with the world and share the gifts of that with the world. So we have to learn how to receive our gifts so that we can continue giving them. And that means understanding that everybody is also has gifts to receive that they want to give. And when everybody's in that place, we're all now experiencing the most amazing possible world that we could, because we're getting the talents and the innovation and the music and the best of everybody in what they're uniquely here to do. And we're not supposed to be each other. So learning how to celebrate our differences, because we gain value from experiencing each other. It's not a competition. I think there's a place for competition. Competition can drive us to do more, and that's really, really fun, right? But competition, it really needs to be untethered from identity. And our gifts need to be untethered from identity. And that's tricky for humans, because our gifts socially keep us safe, or they socially keep us out, right? So if we just remove all of that, just say, look, everybody has gifts, everybody. And those gifts are exactly that. There's something that we could put into the world that makes the world more amazing for everybody else to experience. But again, when you idolize somebody, now you're asking them to be their gift, to be the identity of their gift, instead of to be a person who has these gifts. So it's just a real kind of a frame shift that I am inviting with some of these concepts. And I think using it in the form of like a cartoon story is one of the best ways we can start to introduce this. So we're not have to tell anybody you're doing anything wrong, or you should start doing something or adding this to your routine. Just kind of like telling you a story and seeing, maybe you relate to this, and hopefully we can start to make some change that way.
When we start talking about the dangers of shifting from celebration to idolization, we can think about this as, this is clearly a new thing with the way people, work with social media and the perfection in social media. But the dangers of idolatry are something that we see going back, the idea thousands of years to, it's one of the core 10 commandments of not building false idols or false gods. And it's and it can be a big distinction among different religious denominations of whether you can have pictures of saints or of other holy persons, and how that all plays into it. So, this is something that humanity has struggled with for millennia.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I wonder if that's related to our intense desire to know. Humans are curious animals. It's part of why I think we developed to the level of intelligence that we have. We like to know. And it can be exhausting. And there's always something more to know. So if we can know one thing and just kind of put it in a box, that solves it. So I know that if that person says I should do this, I should do that. Right? Okay, cool. And I can kind of put it in this box and take some pressure off of me. And I do wonder if we just kind of want to put something in a box so we can feel a little bit safer. And because there's all these things that we don't know, but the brain really wants to know. And idols can help just give us answers, even if they're not necessarily truth. And then you can start to question, well, what is truth? But we love symbols. We love packages of data that we can just sort of rely on to rest for a little bit.
They don't surprise us, and the brain is all about making shortcuts. That's actually sort of the core principle behind one of the core principles behind stroke recovery. When we talk about neuroplasticity, it's the concept of the nerves that fire together, wire together. The more you do something, the more neural connections there are to facilitate that activity. That's why for therapy, we have to do repetitions of emotion thousands and thousands of times in order for the brain to relearn how to use that leg or how to use that arm or how to access our stored vocabulary. It takes those thousands of repetitions so that the brain can build enough hardwire connection to just automate that process and then not dedicate resources to it. The brain is always looking for those shortcuts so we can put these things in packages and then just sort of run it like a macro as needed.
Yep, which is a great thing, but it's also can be a very challenging thing. For example, if you look at trauma, The brain has learned, if you've had somebody who's experienced significant trauma or repetitive trauma, the brain goes, oh, okay, well, something, looks like a dog, smells like a dog, sounds like a dog. I was bitten by a dog at the age of 7 and I bled very badly and my dad was there and I suddenly realized that my dad can't protect me from the world. The body starts to recognize all these symbols and goes, oh, okay, well, that must mean danger because it looks like this. And I've recognized that from the past. Bam. Okay, danger. Right? Where, not all dogs are going to bite you. And I think particularly in human relationships and dynamics, that storage of information can get really tricky where, someone who maybe has a certain tone of voice that caused a negative experience in the past, if you meet somebody else who uses the same tone of voice, you may respond to them as if they are hurting you or yelling at you, when the other person has a very different relationship with that. But your brain's just packaged it as, oh, I get data X, I respond with Y. So it takes some energy to really pull apart what's happening, what's automatic, what do I want to continue with, and maybe what pattern do I want to disrupt here, or what pattern do I need to disrupt here?
So we've sort of been ramping up here and getting into some of these deep things, and so let's talk a little bit then about the big question then, and that's that a lot of us in the brain injury community end up spending time then thinking on the idea of brain versus mind, because our brains are damaged in the incident, but then that influences the way our minds work and all of that. So what's your take on the relationship then between brain and mind?
I would actually love to hear your take first as someone who's been through a stroke. And then I'd love to share mine from someone who's been through some trauma because I want to do similar.
Sure. So, I mean, I ended up, my perspective ended up being one of detachment. I think the brain is sort of a mechanism that controls the other things, but I'm not entirely sure what the mind is, but it exists outside of the brain and yet is still a function of that. The brain is simply a mechanism for processing incoming data and delivering that to the mind and then processing instructions going outside from that. In that respect, it's a tool, just like any other technology tool. And in my case, I'm sure that perspective is influenced by my stroke was a right hemisphere stroke. And the right hemisphere generally, in very broad terms, is more responsible for some of the more bigger picture, imaginative, emotional types of things versus the left hemisphere, which is typically more responsible for language processing, logical structures, those types of things. So I'm sure the nature of that damage has influenced that perception of that. But that's sort of been my perspective. It's sort of become this tool, this critically important tool, obviously, that I am then trying to reshape through sheer will, which is ultimately what when it's doing rehab, when it's making the decision that even though my left hand is affected, I'm still going to try and use it at least 3 times to flip that switch or turn that doorknob or whatever to reestablish those patterns and reestablish those connections. But sort of that mind is sort of that broader control over this entire network of components and bits and pieces and parts that the brain represents.
Yeah. We think space is the next frontier. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think it's when you start to get curious about the brain and the mind, it's just endless. It's fascinating. And I think it was either Peter Diamandis or Ray Kurzweil described it as, and I don't know if this is original to them, but basically it's kind of like the mind is the software that builds its own hardware. Or is it vice versa, right? But the mind is this series, you could say, if you really want to step back and look at it clinically, this series of electrical impulses that are happening within the brain. And yet we can consciously choose to shift those electrical impulses and the thoughts that are happening, and those thoughts will rewire the brain itself. And so it is like the thoughts are the thing that is actually driving the brain itself. And it is open a dinner conversation. At what point does consciousness hook into matter? It's like, I don't really know which happens here. But what's something that's so interesting and exciting is that something that sets, I think, humans apart from other animals is the power of choice. We can, whatever state we're in, we can choose that we're going to shift something. We can choose that we're going to neurologically shift something. And just the act of that choice starts to make the choice happen, on a physiological level, the, firing together and wiring together. So that's really exciting. We're in the matrix that we're building at the same time. But I think that when you start to, probably your audience, when you have stuff going on with your brain, start to learn about the brain, and you start to learn what parts of the brain do what. And I had a period of time where I think part of it was stress. Part of it was some old concussions from horses in the past. My brain started to I started to do some really funny things, and I started to get really spooked at a certain point, and I had some brain scans. And when we went through my brain scans, and they were saying, okay, well, this part of the brain like literally isn't getting blood flow when you're under cognitive load, whereas when you're at rest, it's doing this. I was looking at my brain going, wow, it's not me. Like, of course I'm not operating right. Of course I'm like, feel like the world's falling down all the time if this part of my brain literally isn't getting blood flow, and that part of the brain is shutting down, that part of the brain is hyperactive. And it was so fascinating to me that I'm literally riding this body creature, and it's taking commands from me, whatever that is, and I am experiencing what it is creating. So it is this two-way feedback loop, but it does seem like it starts with the mind. It's who is the rider of the body creature? We literally live in biological creatures, and they're taking commands from our brain, and our brain is taking commands from our mind. And that's about as scientific as I can get with it. That's all.
Well, I've seen a recent recent internet meme that describes talks about how amazing we are, because really just a magic skeleton filled with meat and water, powered by electricity, with bones sticking out of my mouth, and tentacles at the end of my arms that I can use to grab things.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I saw something similar that made me laugh. And again, like, hey, humor leads us hope. You can laugh about it. It gives you a little perspective. I was reading an article. I wish I remember the author, but he opened with something along the lines of, do you ever just put your coffee down and stare off into space and noodle on the fact that you're literally riding a monkey you control with your mind? That's really interesting.
Well, I think the other thing that's really interesting too is we're talking about all this from a secular perspective. When you, if you look at it from a religious framework, then what we're talking about as the mind is almost what I think from a religious perspective would simply be considered the soul. And at that point, we get in, there's a whole different level of the metaphysics and what does that mean to faith communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, even just like what I said earlier about the concept of each of us has unique gifts. We all have them. We all have them. Well, who's the us that has them? And so soul is a word that I dance around a lot with in some of the copy that we do from some other more technical audiences, and really wanting to speak to all audiences about the same thing. I've tried to find ways to use a word other than soul to talk about this concept, and I've realized we all know what we're referring to when we refer to a soul, whether you're whatever your spiritual relationship is. We understand the idea of a soul. There's something in us that can connect with it. There's something happening here that we don't fully understand, but it seems to be related to the I that is experiencing something that isn't the brain or isn't even the mind.
So lots of big abstract ideas here. My brain is going to need a rest in a little bit anyway. But what I wanted to talk about then is let's take it down to some of the more mundane stuff then, which is its own level of complexity, and that's the execution of brain. I mean, obviously we talked about you wanted to see how we can help engage with others, get everybody a plush brain that they can work with. I mean, how did you go about launching the company to do this?
I just started poking around. Going, where do you go to create a plush? Most of the projects that I've done with impact art, they're experiential. So they're out in the world, they're under the ocean, that kind of thing. And so I just looked at my favorite plush company, which is Squishables. I just said, I want this to be something that's so high quality that you can't stop touching it and that you use it everywhere. It's a laptop desk, it's a pillow. Like, I want this thing to be everywhere in your home. And so I just started looking up vendors, and turns out Squishables they have a crowdsourced design process. I loved the light, playful energy of their social media. And so I just reached out to them and ended up partnering with them. I will say having a product-based business is a very new animal to me. I'm learning a lot more about it now, but it's, you got inventory, you got SKUs, you got to do projections of what people can order and what that flow is going to be. But having, there's nothing better than making a toy. I'll say that. There's nothing better than making a toy that people love, because every day, whatever you're dealing with is just going to be a joy explosion when you see people posting pictures with it and how happy it's making them. And, I'm like, I just got out of my surgery and I'm so happy to have my brain. It's like, okay, I can die happy now. But yeah, I just say, start looking at different ways that you want to prototype an MVP. If there's people out there that are interested to have like an impact product or even just a fun physical toy, there's a lot of different manufacturers out there. We got our feet wet with Squishables, and now we're kind of finding, direct ways to work with our own designs a little bit more quickly. But yeah, just kind of look for the people who have the energy and the vibe that look like they'd be fun to work with and do a test run with. And start from there.
Well, I think that's really interesting. I mean, we have quite a few Squishables around our apartment too.
Oh, that's awesome!
And it's interesting; they all have very unique personalities, including the peacock who likes macarons. But yeah, so that's really interesting. I think too, when you start talking about something like a plush, there is also then all sorts of different regulations around making the product. I mean, it's one thing to make a virtual product. It's another thing to make a physical product, especially one which many folks would assume defaults to being something that's got to be child friendly. So you get into all sorts of what chemicals, what components get into it. What do you have to do from fire retardation? What do you have to do from local code restrictions and safety and tariffs and all of that fun stuff? Partnering with an established company can certainly help with that. And how did you reach out to them? Was it just through social? Was it through contact on their website? Was it through your own network?
Yeah, I emailed them directly. I actually, because we're also Squishables fans, I emailed them directly, and I included a painting of mine that I had made that features the warble that inspired Brain. And I heard back from them directly. They do custom designs. There's also a couple other companies out there that do custom designs as well. They're generally all the ones that I've contacted, they're a delight to work with. We're now working directly with a partner overseas. But generally, the manufacturer is responsible for all those safety certifications. You just have to specify which ones you need for which region you're going to be selling to.
Is then Squishables or your other third party then managing drop shipping, or do you actually have to take inventory yourself and then manage shipping and that process out of a garage or a warehouse or something like that?
Yeah, it's the latter. So generally, if you're wanting to go the plush direction, which is great because you can make anything an alternate reality for people. People just accept. It's like, oh, it's a peacock with a pancake. Of course, that makes sense. It's a giant brain. most of these companies will, you'll work with them with a prototyping fee. So, generally the prototyping fee is very affordable, which is exciting. And then the more design chops you have, the faster your prototyping process will be, because you'll be able to give them the most details. But they'll work with you to get the product designed and delivered. And then from that point, in our case anyway, we have an MOQ, so we have to order a certain volume to do a run. And then we have them shipped to our fulfillment center, and everything is housed and warehoused in our fulfillment center and shipped from there, including our fabulous boxes that we had made and all that jazz. There may be, I'm not going to say there aren't companies out there that don't do drop shipping, but from my research so far, you want to plan on having your own fulfillment plan in place.
Which gives you better control of customer relationship anyway versus outsourcing all of that. And the box is, again, very cute box. And now I've got this box sitting here and we're like, should we recycle it? No, I don't want to recycle it. It's cute, but what am I going to use the box for? And so we've still got to figure that out. How do we justify keeping this cardboard box?
Yay! That's exactly what I'd hope. Eventually, I'd like to have little things inside the box, like games you can play. And there's a handful of different toys and products out there that are such a great fit to bundle with Brain. Brain Speedball is an amazing, super simple product with a process that it's for stroke. It's actually, he really works with a lot of stroke people who've experienced stroke, but it's really just using play to activate the full processing power of the brain, to get all the brain and emotions to start harmonizing. Anyway, there's a lot of different things that you can do with the packaging alone. My goal is to make every single touch point fridge worthy and artful, and just something that makes you happy. Even the website, whether you buy a Brain or not, my hope is that if you leave the website, you leave just feel a little bit happier that day.
Well, that's great. So, as you've been hearing from your customers or the new adoptive parents of Brain, do you have any favorite names that people have used for naming their Brain?
Oh my gosh, so many. This is, again, I look at the list sometimes. I'm like, people are just brilliant. A Skull Jockey is one of my favorites. Zoink. One person named their Brain My Strong Fighter, which I thought was really beautiful. Noodle Derp. A lot of different spelling variations of Cerebellum. First name Sarah, last name Bellum. Amy D. Gila, like amygdala. Little Squish. The Crazy Lady was one of them. There's just hilarious, the creativity. Right. And it's been really fun.
And there's so much then about what does that say about the person who applies that name and how they feel and all of that stuff too.
Oh, there's so much story you can just hear echoed in the Brain. Another product that I'm really excited to do when we're at that point, we have, right now coming soon, we have Brain Child, which is the smaller 8-inch version of Big Brain. And the next step with Brainchild is to create a series of disguises, kind of like the undercovers you may have seen with Squishables. The kind of cute little covers that go over your brain where the big eyeballs poke out, but the disguise might be concussion, or it might be stroke, or it might be depression, And so, for example, if it's got a depression disguise on, it might cover the eyes a bit so it looks sad and droopy and might be gray and kind of heavy. But if you pull the disguise off, you have this healthy whole brain inside. So we want to create a series of disguises for people to have more fun with whatever it is that they're working with, and be able to have that tactile experience of taking it on and putting it on the brain, getting the brain out of it, putting it on, and just be able to show it to people like, look, here's where I'm at today.
And that brings us to our hack of the week. But first, let's talk about our sponsor, Modus Nova. The Modus Hand and Modus Foot are robotic, AI-powered exoskeleton devices that are designed to help stroke survivors recover the use of a hand or a foot. They do this by helping us play a series of video games over and over so that we can get the repetitions that we need to recover. The devices actually adjust to provide just the right amount of assistance or resistance based on your personal needs. To learn more and see if Modus Nova is right for you, visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. Use promo code STROKECAST to get 10% off your first month. And now back to our hack of the week.
Find one thing a day that's funny. Just find something funny once a day. And you start to find all these things that you realize are funny, and a lot of times they're the things that you thought were the worst part of your day. But you're like, it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of funny. And then when you start to get in a rhythm of that, try 2 things a day that are funny. Humor really is a renewable resource, and it puts things in perspectives, and it gives us juice to get through what we're going through. Because why do this life thing if it's not going to be enjoyable? And humor is a big gift that we have the ability to experience as humans.
So, Adika, this has been fantastic. If folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
You can go to yourpetbrain.com to check out what Brain is about. And howtotrainyourbrain.com is where we're going to be building out more more content, more reference points. We also have a partnership with MedCircle, which is an amazing online video library of everything to do with mental health and brain health. And all pet brain owners get a 5-week access with MedCircle, which has been really fun to be able to partner with. And then I am at secretsamuraiproductions.com. So that's kind of where I come in for impact architecture and engagement art design, which is the type of stuff that Brain is a representation of.
Well, fantastic. And we'll have all those links over at strokecast.com/petbrain. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been great.
Thank you. You've been really fun to talk with. It's been fun to hear a little bit about your world. And now I'm even more curious about kind of what it's like to live in that shifted reality of before and after stroke.
Before I share some additional closing thoughts, I do want to talk about our other sponsor, Like-Minded. Now, Like-Minded is a living, breathing recovery program. When you join Like-Minded, you get access to live virtual workshops to help all aspects of recovery. You can attend sessions run by stroke and TBI survivors, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language therapists, and more. Many of the session leaders, including folks like Ella Sophia and Maddie Niebank and even Jane herself, have previously been guests on Strokecast. You also get access to replays and a private text messaging group for all your questions. Members additionally get a free membership to NeuroFit VR, a virtual reality interface to help you with cognitive skills after brain injury. Get the support, accountability, and direction that you crave and deserve for just $45 a month. Use promo code STROKECAST for 20% off your first month. Now some closing thoughts. One of the things I've learned through the stroke experience is that the line between mental health and physical health is much fuzzier than many folks realize. And while Adika may have felt initially that Brain was, mainly for helping folks deal with anxiety and depression, she has been delighted and humbled to see the physical brain injury communities embrace Brain too. Play itself is just so important. It's a chance to step into another world, however briefly, or a chance to relax and just have fun. It's an opportunity, even as an adult, to explore other feelings in a safe place. And sometimes, we all need that. Anyway, our pet Brain is now named Brian, and I am delighted by the combination of wordplay and mundanity in Brian the Brain. He's actually just sitting over there on the couch next to my desk as I record this, thinking brainy thoughts. So to learn more about Brain, or to adopt one yourself, visit yourpetbrain.com, or just visit strokecast.com/petbrain for links to Adika's site and other fun stuff. Share and discuss this episode with someone you know by giving them the link strokecast.com/petbrain. Subscribe to the free Strokecast email newsletter at strokecast.com/news. And of course, as always, don't get best. Get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.